This is 24/7 World Radio.
Hey, Sean Fellows back with the broadcast again today. And by the way, it's terrible that we have the shooting of a black man in Georgia, but why not report the 25 or so lynchings that took place yesterday by all the savage blacks that killed one?
By the way, this is dated the 8th of May this year. I've never heard of any lynchings. If you did and you've got an article or something on it, I'll have a look myself. Let me know, will you? Not anticipating anybody will do, but so what?
White people yesterday. Why not report those lynchings? Why not report the lynching of that black savage several years ago who made all these white people drink Drano in a grocery store? How about that? You see, because you can't report black on white and crime in this country. That's why I'm telling you, this military government is out to destroy white men, and we cannot stand up for our own rights when we become victims of black savagery, when we become victims of Hispanic savagery, when we become victims of Roman Catholic savagery and the mafia. We can't stand up because that's racist and prejudice and sexist, isn't it? Just keep beating the drum, anti-white, 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 and never ever deal with the black savage. That black savage in L.A., he just came out recently and said, I have no regrets of beating that original Denny half to death. I have no regrets. I'd do it again. How about him? All those black savages should have been put on trial and executed for attempted murder. But we can't do that now. That'd be racism and prejudice. And you see, it's this kind of stuff that's building the white outrage that's going to be unleashed and driven into the new right fascism. That's why they keep beating that drum. So, I think it's time that it ended. Because I don't want to go into white Jesuit fascism, because when we go there, you're going to see some white savagery that you've never ever seen before. And it's all going to be with the idea of taking vengeance on what's been done to the whites of this country for the last 70 years by the majority savage blacks as opposed to the minority civil blacks. Most of them are Christian people. That's what's been done to us for all these years. In addition to the feminine Nazis, the white women feminist Nazis, they're all going to be rounded up too. And these white women feminists have done more to destroy white men than the majority savage blacks. Because they're the ones who divorce us, they take our children from us, they take our money from us, and they reduce us to penury and poverty. Every day, every way, and we can't say anything about it, and the Masonic judges there in the courtrooms make sure that we're going to give the woman everything she wants.
Not me. Oh, that much.
Happens all the time, all the time, all the time. I can make a daily or weekly broadcast on all the black on white crime and all the feminazi on white crime. Maybe I oughta. Not to incite you, but to get you aware of the fact that all this is being done to drive us new right fascism.
Are you listening to this mega?
And they've used a military government to do it.
Dummy.
This is not the civilian government of prior to March 9th, 1933. And we men are going to sign up and go fight in the Marines and the Air Force and the Navy and the Army for this military government that's decimating us? Are we out of our minds?
Yeah. Also, I shouldn't laugh. America's totally dumb.
So, that's reality. That's where we are today. I'm 66. I probably don't have much longer to live on the Lord's flat earth much longer. But while I'm here, I'm going to tell you the truth as best I can, as best I know how. Based upon what I've experienced, what I know to be true in my researches, what the Bible has to say. Because the older men are around for the younger men to teach them what not to do, primarily what mistakes not to make that we made. So, here we are. I think this will just be a continuation of the first hour. Have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Galatians 4:16. I hope not. And so now,
one thing I've noticed, Matthew Landau, Aaron Diotrephes, Deering, Cattle KJV, Bryan Denlinger. You hate the truth. That's one thing I did learn in jail. People hate the truth. Why you don't bother lying? It's hard work. Keeping up with your own lies, isn't it? Anyway, here we go.
It's all coming home to roost.
Yeah, I think it is.
All coming home to roost. Black men, who do you think ruined your cultures in your major cities with crack cocaine? Huh? You think all white people did that to you? Are you that stupid? Are you that racist and bigoted to blame all white people for that? Or maybe you just might want to develop some courage and start asking who's really the one who did this, and read the book by Gary Webb, Dark Alliance, and realize it's the white power structure run by the Knights of Malta. At that time, William J. Casey, head of the CIA. And then later, what was it? Forget his name. But William J. Casey was the one leading the Contras. The Contras getting financed by the crack cocaine industry here. Of course, the Contra's going to lose because communism has to win in every time it goes to the battlefield, and hence Nicaragua is commie. Daniel Ortega, commie, backed by Edward Cardinal Egan out of New York, commie. And so we'll raise up a resistance to the communists only to shoot them down, and that's always what a right-wing resistance accomplishes, getting shot down by the left-wing socialist communists to eliminate deceived, true nationalists fighting for their country but being led by traitors. So I want to read a few things to you from my book, Vatican Assassins, to show you that the Jesuits run America today. They run all the cartel capitalists today. President Trump is another cartel capitalist, just like Joe Biden's cartel capitalist. Anybody whose son gets over $1 billion working for the Red Chinese is a cartel capitalist. Okay, they're all the same. They're all working for the Jesuit order. Biden has his son educated by the Jesuits. Trump has his son educated by the Jesuits. What's the difference? Nancy Pelosi has their son educated by the Jesuits. I mean, what's the difference? Are we such degenerate sons of noble sires that we can't stand against a papal dictatorship tyranny driving us into the new white men? You Texas oil men, you need to finance me so I can say these things more on a national level. Because your sons are going to die in a foreign war, and all your oil money is not going to save them. So let's read a little bit from my book, Vatican Assassins, and we're going into the turn of the century of the 1900s. And on page 904, we read, "Remember, if we do not know the past, we cannot understand the present. And if we don't understand the present, we don't know where we're going for the future. That's why the two most important subjects that you can ever study are the Bible and true history. Everything else is subordinate to it." So we read page 904 in Vatican Assassins. "The actual ruler of this nation lives not in the White House at Washington, but in the Palace of Baltimore." James Carl Gibbons. "No important editorial affecting the Romish Church is printed until it has been submitted to the Cardinal for his criticism." That's called control of the press back in 1888. This was in D. Fulton, Washington, the lap of Rome. You wonder at the power exercised. No member of Congress enters Washington, but he is weighed in Romish balances. If he comes down with shekels for the church and with votes for her policy, all is well. It's like Governor Ronald Reagan. Yeah, let's finally acknowledge Vatican City as a nation state. So let's do it in 1984. Yeah, and we'll get all the Senate pimps and whores in there to go along with what the papacy wants, and they'll go validate that treaty. And so therefore now the government, the military government of Washington, has acknowledged the government in the sovereign state of Vatican City as a sovereign nation state. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. You're not a Roman Catholics, servant of the Pope, and Jesuits in America. Member of Congress enters Washington, but he announces if he comes down to the church and votes for her policy, all is well. If not, there is a reckoning time to come, and an invisible influence is exerted at once that touches the springs of power in his faraway home, and I add, by secret societies. As a political machine, Rome is a transcendent success. And the Jesuit was more than half right when he said, quote, "The representative of the Pope in the Vatican is the ruler of the United States of America," unquote. What that means? That means the papal nuncio out of Washington, D.C. tells the commander-in-chief what to do. The papal nuncio is the grand druid. And as the druids ran the kings of England, even so the Jesuits run the commander-in-chiefs here in America. That's what they're trained for. That's why they go through such a vast, extensive training in their education for 15 years. It takes 15 years to become finally a Jesuit and profess.
15 years? Well, for John Craggan to be a Jesuit, he'd have had to be in Jesuit University at age 3. And you can't go to Jesuit University when you're in jail, you know. No. They don't come into the prisons. You dummy. Can't remember who said that. Oh, it might have been Deering actually. It's that thick. I mean, in that 1 hour video he did lately, 290 times he uses the word okay. In 1 hour. Let's call it 300, right? Be generous. In 1 hour, so 150 and a half an hour. So every 15 minutes, right, if we average it out, it's 50 times he uses the word okay. In 15 minutes. That's 3 times a minute. Wow. It's only a minor point, I know, you know, but you know, I look for silliness like that. But anyway, let's carry on with this. Listen, if you're watching there, I can see somebody is. Come in and chat. Unfortunately, if you're a Denlinger, well, not unfortunately, you're blocked. But it would take you less than 3 minutes, as you know, to create a new channel, so you can comment. Come on in and chat. Fire some snotty questions at me. Oh. Here we go, I'll carry on with this now. There's only 40 minutes or so left of it.
The third vow. There's no topic they're not totally familiar with.
By the way, I've got to say, I've never believed Eric John Phelps is Jesuit. He's not. In all the time I've ever listened to him, in the last 10 years, and I did hear of him when I was in jail, because his book Vatican Assassins, it cropped up in some bibliography in some other book. I mean, it does in other books turn up there, and I think some Christian mentioned it to me. Another brother, possibly Nottingham. But in all the time I've ever heard Eric John, he just rant on a bit in the first 10 minutes of videos that he does by himself. He's no Jesuit. He's worth listening to. When he's in the stream by himself, I won't listen to him if he's in the stream with, no offence to him, but I won't listen if he's got Widger in with him.
You're with none. There's not the private or public life of any man that's a concern to them, not fully known to them. Why do you think they run Microsoft and Google?
Yeah,
and Apple
on Facebook.
and the CIA can do all of it with their back doors. So they know every stroke that you put on that computer. They know every website you've been to. They know all about you and what you spend on your debit card, credit card. They control. They monitor all the banking transactions. They know everything about you.
It goes through D-Wave. It goes through D-Wave. CERN invented the
And the
internet.
Pope's representative in America here, he was the papal nuncio. He lives in Washington, D.C. He has a big, beautiful estate in Washington, D.C. You go see it sometime. He's the real king of Washington, D.C. That papal nuncio tells Donald Trump what to do. President Trump, commander-in-chief. He does exactly what he's told. Just like Billy Boy Clinton. Just like good old George W. Bush. Just like Ronald Reagan. Just like Jimmy Carter when the Jesuits told him to give the Panama Canal to Panama now. Just give it away, Jimmy. And he had a Jesuit overseeing it. They're all working for the Pope, folks. But don't believe me. Let's go to a few more quotations. Page 904. Quote. We are in immediate danger in this country of becoming subservient to a foreign potentate, whose throne is on the banks of the far-off Tiber. The Pope of Rome claims the right to hold and exercise temporal power wheresoever he can secure it. That's political power. That means ruling the governments of all nations. This is written in 1894, by the way. But continuing. To the ends thereof, his entire hierarchy are subject to his will and command. This is the whole purpose for the Roman hierarchy here, for all the cardinals here, the archbishops who are cardinals for the most part, for the bishops. Their whole purpose is the implementation of temporal political power of the Pope and nothing more. They're disguised with a religion that makes you think they're righteous men, truly seeking to serve God. Yeah, they're God in the Vatican, the Pope of Rome, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Who, when he speaks ex cathedra, speaks the words of God. It's all about dual jurisdiction. Which jurisdiction are we going to live under? The Pope's jurisdiction with his military government as of March 9, 1933, or our Constitution, civilian, Protestant jurisdiction with limited powers, where we have some freedom of thought, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press, and open Bible reading and gun ownership?
To be frank, especially when you think about some of the stuff that's going on in America and the general mentality, not everybody obviously, you've no chance. Without Jesus Christ behind it, you haven't a chance getting your government under the Constitution. Kick the Jesuits out of the USA, arrest all the banking CEOs, the director of the CIA, the FBI, Homeland Security, what's that other organisation, FEMA, IRS. Sorry, you've got to laugh at the thought of the possibility that somebody thinks that they're going to get. I mean, don't misunderstand me. Eric prays for this. I know he prays about all this stuff every day. You know, I wouldn't say it was naive of him. God can bring him out some amazing stuff. He has done in the past. He still can. He will do. But the obvious mess that the USA is in, especially with this COVID BS that's going, you know, they may well start martial law. Somebody mentioned today, was it a video I was listening to? But with all the farmers, I mean, England's only a small country really, and USA, it's got tons of white farmland. Have they been allowed to go out and do some farming and planting and whatever for food next year? Because there's no shipping, or if there is, it's very sparse. I think there is going to be food shortages. I've noticed in the shops, I don't know if, well, I'm sure you have, prices creeping up in this country by 10 pence here, 10 pence there, 5 pence there. It's probably similar in the USA. Another 10 cents on your little packet of tea bags or your packet of biscuits or your milk. Food shortages. Yeah, I can see that happening. I don't know, I mean, you know. Let's carry on, listen to more of this. Go on, Eric.
Continuing. To the ends thereof, his entire hierarchy are subject to his will and command. The most powerful organization at his disposal is bound by oath to subvert the constitution and laws of all countries to the word of the Pope. Why do you think the Supreme Court rules like it does? It's sitting in military jurisdiction. Take a look at the Supreme Court room where they meet. There's 9 justices. On each side of them is an American flag trimmed in gold fringe with gold cords and tassels. They're sitting in military jurisdiction. Every decision of the Supreme Court, writs of certiorari, every last one of them are decided under military jurisdiction or the doctrine of necessity. Everything changed on April 25th, 1938, when the federal court in the Erie decision did away with general federal common law to be replaced with the emergency jurisdiction of the Trading with the Enemy Act, Section 17. And that's where every federal district court sits. They sit in the emergency war powers military jurisdiction that was granted under Trading with the Enemy Act, Section 17. Now it's 4316. 50 U.S.C. 4316, that's the jurisdictional statute that gives military jurisdiction to the federal courts when they did away with Article 3 jurisdiction of the Constitution. Every court, Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, Federal District Court, all sitting in military jurisdiction. Isn't that right, you federal district judges?
They're all Jesuit, Eddie.
But you won't say it. You can't say it. You can't talk about it in open court, because if you do, you're going to lose your job. And if you lose your job, you're going to lose your pension. And if you lose your pension, you're going to be just like the rest of us. Aren't you? You liars, cowards, and cheats. I have no respect whatsoever for one federal district judge, ever. They're all communists working for the Pope.
That guy is seriously angry. Really angry. Not nastily in a hateful way, but he's angry. I mean, you know, I don't hear any Christians who are truly angry about the way sin, essentially. Eric gets angry about that. He has rants on it on a Friday, I think. This guy's serious. I have a lot of respect for him over it. He's genuinely angry, I know.
And the last thing they have for you is any respect. I just had a student being told by a trustee in a bankruptcy 7 proceeding. He said, well, we've had enough. We've wasted the court's time. Hey, mister, I paid for that, $700. I expect to be given some justice here. Don't you dare tell me I'm wasting the court's time. And that's their attitude. And I get up and mad. Who do they think they are? They better be going in that court saying, hi, how are you doing? Oh, nice to meet you. I don't agree with you. They need to be their hat in the hand. They're supposed to be a servant, but they're not. They're not servants. They're agents on behalf of the commander-in-chief to keep you enemy belligerent down. That's what they're there for, boy. That's right, boy. Shut up, boy. Do what I tell you to do. You're wasting the time, boy. That's the federal district judges today, and they're all commies. They're all anti-gun ownership. They're all anti-white. They're anti-white male. They're all pro-commie. They're all internationalists. The last thing they want to believe in is true nationalism and patriotism and limited government and having a country where weak people can prosper some. I know. Why is that? Because we're under military government, and all the courts, federal courts, are sitting in emergency war powers military jurisdiction. And they're proceeding according to the course of English Admiralty, which is nothing more than the regulation of commerce in both civil and criminal matters. And that's why every case is given a CRIS number, a court registry investment system number, because they're going to invest the case, and when it gets invested on Wall Street in a certain mutual fund, it'll be put into a fund that can be traced through its CUSIP fund number. That's every case. They're monetizing, securitizing every case and making zillions so they can finance the deep underground military projects and black budgets. That's what they're doing. They're using you, making merchandise of you, of us. This is Templar banking. Banking of the Knights Templars, which are now the Jesuit order, except 1,000 times worse. Going on. In this, the Roman Catholic hierarchy in the United States may thank themselves for the most compact and determined organization ever founded to withstand the political machinery of that church. Yep. It's the most compact and determined organization ever founded. And it runs the political machinery of that organization. Alberto Rivera never called it a church, he called it the Roman Catholic institution. You're right, it's an institution, it's a political power. It has nothing to do with God, it has nothing to do with the Bible, it has nothing to do with salvation of people. It's about a religion. It's evil. It's Babylonian, where in their Babylonian priest king merges that title of king and priest, just as Belshazzar had, just as Nebuchadnezzar had, just as the Pope has, just as Caesar once had. And the Pope's a continuation of the office of Caesar. Let's go on. The man who said this, Scott F. Hershey, 1894. Heirs of the Roman Catholic Church. We go on now with a quotation from Woodrow Wilson. There has come over the land that un-American set of conditions which enables a small number of men who control the government to get favors from the government. By those favors, to exclude their fellows from equal business opportunity. By those favors, to extend a network of control that will presently dominate every industry in the country. I speak for the moment of the control over the government exercised by big business. Behind the whole subject, of course, is the truth that in the new order, government business must be associated closely. That's exactly why we've had all this investing of trillions of dollars for the purchasing of American businesses, so it unites the government with business, and this is a key identifier of fascism. Cartel capitalism promotes fascism and communism. But here, they're going to oppose fascism first to eliminate the enemies that the Jesuits want to destroy, namely the Jews and Bible-believing Christians for the most part. And then they'll implement communism, and then after their Sino-Soviet Muslim invasion, they'll finish off the rest. You wait till the Chinese start killing here. If you want a little preview, just take a look and see what they did to Tibet. The whole subject, of course, is the truth that in the new order government and business must be associated closely. An invisible empire has been set up above the forms of democracy. This was written in 1913 by Woodrow Wilson in his book titled The New Freedom. The masters of the government of the United States are the combined capitalists and manufacturers of the United States. Who are they? Get the book, The Robber Barons. You see who they are. the big bankers, the big masters of commerce.
Oh, by the way, I just make this point while Eric is mentioning books. Plugging a book. Do try not to be a fool like Accountable KJV. He says he doesn't trust the Jesuits. He despises them, this, that and the other. But how foolish is it for him to buy a book apparently exposing the Jesuits, telling you all the ins and outs and this, that and the other, blah blah blah. Guess who wrote the book? A Jesuit. Accountable KJV. You clown. I can't remember which book it was that you got. You did say it was written by a Jesuit. It might be Secreta Monita. Because I don't know why you read that, the name, the title of that book in that peculiar fashion. You are a bit weird. Talking about it as though you're onto something. And yet it's written by a Jesuit, somebody who you say you don't trust. Clown. And then you bought a book on critical thinking. Think about that phrase. Critical thinking, written by a Catholic nun. Stupid much, Brad? Stupid. I mentioned it to you, I told you, before you even bought your book on it. And you went and bought one written by a Roman Catholic nun. What a fool. Fool. Here we go again.
The heads of railroad corporations and of steamship corporations. That by agreements handed around among themselves, they control prices. And that same group of men control the larger credits of the country. They have been running it through the agency of those interesting persons called political bosses. Yeah, political bosses. Bosses like the Knights of Columbus at Tammany Hall, or the Knights of Malta like John J. Raskob in the 30s, who was the secretary of the Democratic Party. These are the political bosses. They're the Pope's bosses of the political parties in this country. Or Elmer T. Bopst, who was the founder of Warner Lambert and Anna Malta, and he completely backed the new right Richard Nixon. They work for the same king, the Pope. These are the political bosses of today. Going on. There's hardly a part of the United States where men are not aware that secret private purposes and interests have been running the government. They have been running it through the agency of those interesting persons called political bosses, quote unquote. We may delude ourselves with the pleasing belief that we are electing our own officials. But of course the fact is we are merely making an indifferent and ineffectual choice between two sets of men, nominally opposing each other but actually working in perfect understanding and cooperation, and named by interests which are not ours, unquote. Who said this? President Woodrow Wilson, 1913. He's the one that backed the Federal Reserve Act in December of 1913. He later would say on his deathbed that I betrayed my country. Woodrow Wilson said both parties work together. He said the political bosses run those parties. Those political bosses are of a foreign interest, but he never had the guts enough to say it was the Pope and his Jesuits. That's because Woodrow Wilson's right-hand man was a fourth-degree Knight of Columbus, and his name was Joseph P. Tumulty. Well, we hear all of this of that Texas Freemason out of Texas, the one who was an advisor to Wilson overseas, Edward Mantle House, but we don't hear anything about Joseph P. Tumulty. He was the man of power. He's the one that only allowed people to see President Woodrow Wilson for 8 years while he was president. If you didn't get through Tumulty that night at Columbus, you didn't get to see him. And Tumulty was working for the Archbishop of Baltimore, James Cardinal Gibbons, the first American Pope. We go on. What do you read? Page 907. The hatred which Europe once manifested toward the central ecclesiastical power is fast disappearing. That means the Pope of Rome. There will be a general agreement to exalt Rome. That's called the European Union. Do away with our national identities, our racial identities, our linguistic identities, and our monetary identities, and we're going to unite under a European Union controlled by the Pope. The former head of the European Bank, Mario Draghi, not of Malta. They're all working for the Pope. Angela Merkel's working for the Pope. The president of France, Macron, is working for the Pope. British Prime Minister, who supposedly just got COVID-19, he's working for the Pope. They're all working for Rome. That's why we could have an international shutdown of all countries, because Rome said to. That's why. And all of her agents in command of the governments of all these countries are going to obey. This shutdown of the last 3 months or so, February, March, April, May, 2.5 months, is an order of the Pope of Rome, the Jesuit of Rome. This is his power. This is how far his power reaches. There was a Roman Catholic inquisitor. His name was Torquemada out of Spain. And he said, the arm of the church is long. Yeah, it is. It reaches right to Washington, right to your state capital, right to your local county, right to you, boy. And you're going to do what we tell you to do, no matter what kind of constitutional rights you think you have, because you're in a military government, and the doctrine of necessity rules. And if we deem it a necessity that all the businesses shut down, everybody walking around with masks, that's what you're going to do, boy.
Some Catholic comes to my door telling me what to do, they're going to get told to...
But we'll return, fellows, back in a moment as we continue to read quotations from good and godly men of the past who warned us of what we're under now.
Anyway, I've had enough of that.
This is 24/7 World Radio. And you're listening to The Eric Don Phelps Show.
Right, I can see that there's somebody watching there. Come on in and comment. Unless you're frightened the Denlingers are going to revoke your salvation or something. Unless you're frightened that Aaron Deering is going to do a hatchet job on you. That disgusting little rat up in Scotland. He's a big gold blouse. Come on in and chat.
This is Brother Jack. I invite you to listen to my broadcast 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 247worldradio.com. Tu brat Jacek, zapraszam Was do wysłuchania broni reformacji w Polsce, polskich protestantów, kierowaną przez jezuitów i przez rzymską katolicką instytucję. Dołącz do mnie w każdy czwartek.
Brother Nicholas, join me every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Radio. This is Bruder Nicholas. Ich lade euch herzlich ein, mich anzuhören, jeder Dienstag um 2 Uhr nachmittags, amerikanische Zeit, für die deutsche Bibelwahrheitsstunde und 3 Uhr amerikanische Standardzeit für die niederländische Bibelwahrheitsstunde am World Radio 24/7. Dit is broeder Nico. U bent hartelijk uitgenodigd om elke dinsdag
This is the Eric John Phelps Show on 24/7 World Radio.
Well, Eric John Phelps continuing in the broadcast of today. Because I have told you the truth, I become your enemy, Galatians 4:16. It's imperative. We know the Jesuits run all governments of this world, and all governments have been submitted to the papacy through the wars and political diplomacy and the economic attack on all the other nations to submit them to some dictator loyal to the Pope. The Vatican has its economic hitmen. If they don't work, the Vatican brings in the jackals, the CIA, and if they don't work, they bring in the army. Sent by the Pentagon, working for the Pope. But let's read a few more quotations. Page 908. This is written in 1911. Quote, Jerusalem will be given to the Holy See. Chicago, October 12th. Remember, the Archbishop of Chicago, about this time, I believe, is Cardinal Quigley, who said, in 20 years, when Rome rules this country, Rome will rule the world. So in Chicago, October 12th, that Italy will not make peace with Turkey until it has wrested Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim sovereignty and presented it to the Pope as a papal state. Is a statement of the Italia, an Italian newspaper of Chicago, edited by Oscar Durante. Several columns of the first page of the paper, which will be issued tomorrow, are devoted to editorials and news items, with the burden of which is that Italy will demand the cessation of Jerusalem and the Holy Land as indemnification for the expenses incurred in the war with Turkey over Tripoli. By the way, this will later be accomplished by Britain in 1917, just 6 years later. That the Holy Land will be presented to the Pope, thus restoring to him temporal power. You get that? The Holy Land will be presented to the Pope, thus restoring to him temporal power. They're not going to do that with Italy. They're going to do that with Great Britain. When Allenby takes Jerusalem in 1917 and the Turks flee without firing a shot, then and at that moment the temporal power was returned to the Pope over Jerusalem through his agents running the British Empire, including King George, Knight of Malta V. That this will bring about a reconciliation between the Vatican and the Quirinal, that's in Spain, bringing to an end the self-imposed retirement of the Holy Father, since the papal states in Italy were seized by the Italian government. That's in 1870 by the great King Victor Emmanuel II. So remember, when the Pope's temporal power was taken from him in 1870, the Pope then declared himself a prisoner, locked himself in the Vatican, declared himself retired. It's the same way with the one who followed Leo XIII. Then the Pope after that was Pius X. They all consider themselves a prisoner of that terrible king of Italy, until the Lateran Treaty of 1929, when the temporal power was restored to the Pope. And the Italian people had to give $100 million to that man of sin because they dared to take the temporal power from the Pope. I tell you Italians that are listening, you better realize your greatest enemy is not some white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Your greatest enemy is the Pope of Rome. Kept you broke and ignorant and full of prostitutes in Rome. That's what the Pope wants. But he used Great Britain to restore the temporal power of the Pope. And he also got rid of the king. Well, King Victor Emmanuel III gave his power to Benito Mussolini, but after the war there is no Italian king anymore. The king morphed into a military dictator. The military dictator morphed into essentially socialist communism in Italy because all the Jews had been killed out. They had evacuated all the Jews from Rome. It's just as the Pope wanted to. The Nazis took them to concentration camps. So what need do you now have for any more fascism or any more king? We can have just a socialist, communist, democratic government. Or the Christian Democrats run in Italy. Yeah, we can have communism there, as it runs it today. For the first time since the days of the Crusades, the cross will replace the crescent in the land most sacred to those professing the Christian Roman Catholic religion. The news, I have a quotation in Days of Our Years from Pierre Van Passen, where the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem said, concerning the later Zionists, he says, they want to destroy that mosque, which was the Double Rock. It's in Pierre Van Passen's work, Days of Our Years, 1939. He said, they want to destroy that mosque. And they want to build Solomon's temple there. That's what the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, that criminal, said in the late 1930s. And it's this same Grand Mufti who's going to be invited by Hitler to go to Berlin and spend 4 years there as his guest from 1941 to 45, where the Grand Mufti is working with the SS to recruit the Muslims to be in the Handschar division of the SS to mass murder the Jews and the Orthodox of Yugoslavia or Serbia. This Grand Mufti of Jerusalem knew exactly what was going on because he was a part of it. He was named Grand Mufti by the High Commissioner of Palestine. What was it? Herbert Samuel, a Masonic Jew. He named him to be the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, and the high Muslim leaders said, "What have you done, naming a thug to be the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem?" Because the Jesuits told Herbert Samuel to do that. They controlled him. He goes on and says, the news item on which the articles are based comes as a special cablegram from a correspondent. For years, is said to have had especially good sources of information in the Vatican. Under the heading, quote, Italy is to redeem the Holy Land. It will make a gift of it to the head of Christendom, the Pope. The Italian will say, quote, how a protectorate of Tripoli and an offer of indemnity no longer will satisfy Italy, but complete annexation and reimbursement of the war expenses incurred to the present will be demanded. Following this appears a telegram from Arturo Setti, Italia's correspondent at Rome, which reads as follows. I am in a position to communicate a very important fact that learned through a personage high in the Vatican diplomacy, that's Cardinal Secretary of State. Besides conquering Tripoli, Italy is planning to take possession of the city of Jerusalem and the Holy Land and to present it to the Holy See to be held under the protectorate of the Italian government. And that would be at the time the King Victor Emmanuel III, which didn't happen. Italy didn't do it, Great Britain did it. You see, one of the designs of the papacy is, look over here, and then they attack you and hit you with a sucker punch from somebody else. That's Vatican diplomacy. They never do what they say they're going to do, but they do it, but they do it in another way. They say one thing and they do another. There's a two-headed Janus. One face says this and another face does the other. Pope John Paul II, we're against the war in Iraq, secretly caused it with the CIA. And not a Malta, Paul Bremer III, and those other wicked sinners, and George Day 10 and another Malta. The Vatican in 1911 purposed to take Jerusalem from the Muslims, openly but falsely using Italy, but secretly and truly using the British. And that's exactly what happened. Going on. We read. Oh, yes. We read concerning more of the papacy. We read on page 917 from the pen of the great Jewish doctor Emanuel Josephson in 1968, called The Federal Reserve Conspiracy and Rockefellers. He writes, nothing more clearly reveals the role in which Jewish Freemason Paul, and then he has Warburg, was deliberately used by the And I say the papacy is white, Gentile, Masonic, and then he goes, conspirators, then their treatment of him. But here's how they treated Warburg after they passed Federal Reserve Act. After he had served his purpose, as soon as they had forced the British into submission and agreed to bring the U.S. into World War I to finance and fight for the Allies, Warburg was ousted from their federal quote-unquote reserve, never to return to it, either directly or indirectly. He had served his role as quote-unquote fall guy. Josephson continues. See, they're going to use upfront Jews as fall guys. Why do you think they have an upfront Jew Secretary of Treasury here? So that when things may crash or whatever, they can blame the Jews. Why do you think they got Chucky Schumer heading the Democratic Party in the Senate? So when they pass this Rooseveltian massive injection of credit into the country and it goes bust, they can blame the Jews. And Chucky Schumer facilitated that. They always have an upfront Jew to do these deeds of the Jesuits, to hurt us, to ultimately deceive us into thinking that the Jews did it, and it's not Jews, it's the Jesuits using certain Masonic core Jews. It's their modus operandi. Going on with Josephson, quote, in addition, there was his knowledge of central banking and the value as a Jew that would serve them well in distracting attention from their own, and I add Gentile, malign role, and in affording a scapegoat with the inflammatory value of quote-unquote Shylock and Jew. Remember Shylock in The Merchants, written by Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, not William Shakespeare. Shylock was in the person of William Cecil. To understand the Shakespearean plays, you have to read The Star of England by Dorothy and Carlton Ogborn. It's nearly 1,000 pages, written in 1952. They go into every play and tell you who those characters really are. You cannot put it down. And so, Josephson says, yeah, they're using an upfront Jew so that these white Gentile, white power structure is not going to be blamed. Next quotation. Quote, the answer to the Kennedy assassination is with the Federal Reserve Bank. Don't underestimate that. It's wrong to blame it on Angleton and the CIA, per se only. This is only one figure of the same hand. The people who supply the money are above the CIA, unquote. Who said this? Marina Oswald, in a book titled Rule by Secrecy by Mars. And that's what she said about the Kennedy assassination. Goes right to the Federal Reserve Bank. Who runs the Federal Reserve Bank? The Knights of Malta. Certain high Knights of Malta that ran the New York Fed were Peter G. Peterson, William J. McDonough, and others. They're also in the Council on Foreign Relations, overseen by the Archbishop of New York. The Archbishop of New York oversees the New York Fed. The Archbishop of Washington oversees the Board of Governors. There's always a cardinal in every major commercial city, especially here in America, to oversee the economics and the politics. And he enforces it with his Jesuits, and the Jesuits are the enforcers using the CIA, the FBI, and the Mafia. Going on. And by the way, at the time of the Kennedy assassination, James Angleton was the Knight of Malta. He was at the head of the Israeli desk and the Vatican desk. Another Knight of Malta right-hand man of him was Raymond Rocca in the CIA. And the director of the CIA at the time was another Knight of Malta named John McCone. When are we going to start attacking the Knights of Malta as agents for the papacy and carrying out political assassinations in this country? Do you think Ronald Reagan was really shot by Hinckley? When rather he was shot by Jerry Parr, an agent of the Secret Service, and who would benefit? Why, none other than Knight of Malta, George Herbert Walker Bush, who was really the president of the United States during the two administrations of Reagan. And then he gets his own 4-year term. George Herbert Walker Bush is not a multi-bonesman working for the Pope, was the president of this country, not commander-in-chief for 12 years. Going on. Another quotation. We read on page 920. These are the words of Warren G. Harding, 29th President of the United States, in his U.S. inaugural address. Here's what he said. Quote, "The recorded progress of our republic, materially and spiritually, in itself proves the wisdom of the inherited policy of non-involvement in old world affairs." And that, as I add, is in accordance with George Washington's farewell address. "We see no part in directing the destinies of the old world. We seek no part in directing the destinies of the old world. We do not mean to be entangled. But America, our America, the America builded on the foundations laid by the inspired fathers, can be a party to no permanent military alliance. It can enter into no political commitments, nor assume any economic obligations which will subject our decisions to any other than our own authority. Every commitment must be made in the exercise of our national sovereignty." Then he says, "The world government, namely starting with the League of Nations, is contrary to reason in San Francisco and shortly thereafter died. They killed that 33rd degree Freemason because he wouldn't go along with the League of Nations and the Jesuit Vatican's attempt for building world government using America." So you got George Bush saying, "We're going to have a new world order." You got George President Harding saying, "Oh no, a world super government is contrary to everything we cherish and can have no sanction by our republic." Now that's an American president. And by the way, we did economically very well with Warren Harding. He did some very good things. Continuing on, we read how they took the gold from us. Here is a quotation, page 924, concerning the Federal Reserve, out of the book titled "Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country," written by William Grider in 1987. And he was writing for the CFR-controlled Washington Post. Quote, "But the Federal Reserve did also function in the realm of religion. Its mysterious powers of money creation, inherited from priestly forebears, shielded a complex bundle of social and psychological meanings. With its own form of secret incantation, the Federal Reserve presided over awesome social ritual transactions so powerful and frightening they seemed to lie beyond common understanding. Richard F. Syron, S-Y-R-O-N, a vice president of the Boston Fed, who served for a time as special assistant to Paul Volcker, suggested that the institutional temperament and structure of the Federal Reserve System most resembled the Catholic Church in which he had been raised." And then this Richard Syron says, "The system is just like the church. That's probably why I feel so comfortable with it. It's got a pope, the chairman, and a college of cardinals, the governors and bank presidents, and a curia, senior staff. The equivalent of the laity is the commercial banks. If you're a naughty parishioner in the Catholic Church, you come to confession. In this system, if you're naughty, you come to the discount window for a loan. Every Federal Reserve Bank, all 12 of them, have what's called a discount window where they extend credit to commercial banks. We even have different orders of religious thought, like Jesuits and Franciscans and Dominicans. Only we call them pragmatists and monetarists and neo-Keynesians," unquote. The Federal Reserve, my friend, is patterned after the Vatican. They have 12 banks, just like the 12 apostles. And they have a central bank, a central board of governors in Washington, just like Christ. Or the Christ of Romanism. The Jews don't run anything. They're mere tokens, as was Paul Warburg, and after they used him, they got rid of him. Well, what's happened? Well, we now have a military-industrial complex that's second to none, while we have the destruction of the American peoples, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, in this demoralization and drug trade, all run by the Pope's CIA and Mafia. Further weakening the population to ensure its defeat in a future day. In the meantime, they've perfected their space force, their deep underground military bases. They perfected their apparatus to impose ultimately new right quasi-fascism. The Jesuits run the Department of Homeland Security with their graduates from Georgetown, whatever. They run the FEMA, Federally Military Management Agency, that's subject to the DHS. They run the Centers for Disease Control and Protection with Robert Redfield, a Jesuit coadjutor trained at Georgetown. They run the NIH with Jesuit Fauci. They run Goldman Sachs through Jesuits, they're high knights. They run the presidency through Donald Trump. Many good things as he's done, they still run the presidency through him. He's got Fauci in his right hand. Rush Limbaugh says he's a de facto American president. There is no such thing as right and left. It's all from the top down, and they want you to choose which hand that they are controlling. So in conclusion, we need to realize that Satan's kingdom is not divided. And you're either a member of the kingdom of Christ, having translated in the kingdom of his dear son, Colossians chapter 1, or you're in the kingdom of Satan, your spiritual father, and the lusts of your father you will do. You're in one kingdom or another. And it's my prayer today, my friend, that you would truly join in the kingdom of Jesus Christ by recognizing your sin, that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. There's none good, no, not one. And the wages of sin is death. That is, if we get what we deserved. But the love of God was manifested in the person of his Son, who stepped up, who died for our sins according to the Scriptures, was buried and rose again according to the Scriptures, and that's the true gospel of 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 4, and now is commanded all men everywhere to repent and to believe this gospel, to the eternal saving of your body, soul, and spirit, and to your present blessing in this world if we obey him and do his will. And that's my prayer for all of you listening today. Are you saved? If you are you doing the will of God? And part of the will of God, are you resisting the devil by the power of the Spirit? And are you resisting the devil in the physical area of politics? And who runs your country? Because the devil is running your country and my country through the Roman papacy. It's Light Corps, it's Marine Corps being the Jesuit order as they oversee the entire Roman hierarchy and bring this country into a huge two-front war after they reimpose Donald Trump to the end, that we're going to lose it, we'll be attacked, we're going to be invaded and subjugated as was done to Germany. And we will deserve it unless we repent. Brother Eric John Phelps, thank you for tuning in today. The Book of Vatican Assassins, Wound in the House of My Friends. Just go to my website, VaticanAssassins.org. Get the ebook. Sorry I don't have the book available, but you can get the ebook. Go to 24/7 World Radio, and you can listen to previous broadcasts there. I also offer my ecclesiastical trust for those of you who want to have all your property in a trust and not in your own name, which is an absolute necessity these days. I have my private citizenship class, in which you all need to take and cease to be U.S. citizens, but become pre-March 9th, 1933 private citizens of the United States and a private citizen of the state where you privately reside. You got to get your status changed. If you have 401k savings, you need to put it into a fixed indexed annuity. I will give you the contact for that. You need to have your anti-vaccination cards. I ask $50 a piece. Just let me know if you want one, and we'll get that arranged shortly. I have many good things to offer you. I have LLCs, New Mexico LLCs, you can do business with your all-caps sole member, and I also offer my income tax avoidance class for those of you in the private sector. If you're in the private sector, and you work for a private business, or you have a private business, I'll teach you how to not to volunteer anymore. Class is $1,500. You need to take it. We need to stop voluntarily financing our own destruction. Will you help me? Will you help yourself? But first be saved. First know the Lord. Start reading the AV 1611 King James Bible as your final authority of faith and practice, and find a place where you can fellowship and be exhorted in your most holy faith, for as we see the day approaching, we need to encourage and exhort one another. Until Monday, may the Lord bless you as you do His will according to His word. The AV 1611, and please remember me in your prayers for two minutes a day, lifting up holy hands without wrath and doubting for me. You do it for me? Go to my Patreon website, sign up, become a patron for $1 a month or so. You can read all my new posts. So until Monday, Lord bless. Maranatha.
This is 24/7 World.
Oh, this is, I think I mentioned this the other day. This is page 427 of Jacob Thompson's book. Or Jacob if you want, I prefer Jacob. Jacob, you've written this book as though it's the equivalent of God's word. You fool. I know I've done this in another live stream, but so what? Let's read this bit, as much as I despise the idea of doing so. The last claim, and the biggest and most controversial by far, that is an understatement, is that if you have reached the end of this book, cover to cover, completely read and prayerfully meditated upon, you missed the word it out, cover to cover, completely read and prayerfully meditated upon it, deeply meditated, and still choose to reject what has been laid out in this book, in other words Jacob Thompson's book, then you are not saved. This is my final word. Thus saith Jacob Thompson. He has made a proclamation. I mean, to reach the end of this book, you've got to read all of it. In other words, you would have to buy it. I didn't buy it. I cannot reveal my sources. The last claim. I mean, he's modelled this book on, it seems like, or this part of it anyway, this page 427, like the book of Revelation, as though Jesus Christ is signing it off. Well, of course he isn't. The last claim. And the biggest and most controversial by far is that if you have reached the end of this book, cover to cover, in other words, you bought it and read it like a fool, cover to cover, completely read and prayerfully meditated upon it, deeply meditated, sounds Catholic that actually, and still choose to reject what has been laid out in this book, if you reject Jacob Thompson's so-called teaching in his book, then you are not saved. Your salvation is revoked. What about, Jacob? If somebody's never heard of you or your book, which wouldn't amaze me, or Denlinger, because he's put his rubber stamp, he's sent up the blue smoke on this, you know. Clown. You know, are they saved if they haven't read your book? Oh, hold on, they've got to read your book, as though it's proof that they're saved. Oh, if you've read it all the way through and you've meditated upon it. You know, oh, I mean, this just beggars belief. Jacob Thompson, sinners to repentance. You must be the most stupidest, foolish, childish novice on the whole of the internet altogether. How you can write a book and say that. I'm just going to highlight it so that there's no doubt that you are. Oh, if you don't read this and completely prayerfully meditate on it, then you're quenching the Spirit of God. Is that the other implication, is it, Jake? Oh, I've got some choice words I'd love to use to describe you. It isn't about you though, Jake. Well, it is about you, but I mean, not to make it personal. But Jacob, your stupidity, your utter stupidity, foolishness, pretentiousness, presumptuousness, big-headedness. Oh, hold on, you're American, aren't you? Right, it's staggering. Almost, I mean, it's just difficult to comprehend that somebody could be stupid enough to even put a statement like that in their book. Hopefully it can be read on screen there, yeah. Come on. Right, I know there's one person watching. I don't have a YouTube tab open other than the one with Eric John Phelps where I was playing that. And that video is finished. In other words, I'm not watching my own video. Oh, I'm sick of this slowness of this laptop. Oh, and as I said earlier, accountable KJV. Oh, I can't be bothered. You people really, to be honest, I do make the effort, but you're not worth the effort. You can't even communicate with people outside of your group. Your own members of, well, not Bryan, won't communicate to people like Kingstable or Ed Penninger, ask them questions and blah blah. Because if they get caught by Aaron Deering or Divisive Inerrantist or Accountable KJV, they'll get a hatchet job video done on them. You'll do them dirt. And you people that are following Denlinger and whatever, Yeah, they'll acknowledge you as being a brother. But why don't you do a little test? Just a teeny weeny little test, like John Craggan. Well, he wasn't doing a test as such, but he contradicted Bryan in the most politest, kindest way. He wasn't rude, nasty, snotty, sarcastic, ironic, or any of that sort of thing. He even apologised for making a video, I think, I seem to remember. And he got treated like garbage. So any of you Denlingers, just as a partial test of whether you're actually in a cult or not, why don't you find something to contradict Bryan Denlinger about, or something that somebody else has mentioned that contradicts Bryan? You know, don't go hard at it, just a lightweight sort of, oh, I think Bryan's saying this, blah blah, or something, you know. Or, I know, why don't you contradict that big fat Zeppelin, oops, sorry, I didn't mean the add-on then. Well, I did, but I shouldn't have used it. That bloated poltroon, divisive inerrantist, Matthew Landau. Contradict him on one of his videos. Point out his arrogance or something. Or ask him where his video with that discussion of with King's Table has gone to. You're just curious, you know. Oh, I know, why don't you ask accountable KJV where he got this doctrine of Jesus being a skin suit? Where did he get that? Or another test. Personally, I think Jacob Thompson is that ignorant, he will ignore your comment anyway. Pick fault with his book. He'll just end up talking rubbish. Who else could he contradict? Oh, Aaron Deering. Ask him if he's still masturbating over sodomite porn, bondage and things like that. Is he doing drugs still? Point out the stupidity of his video, the utter childishness of his video, you know, the one on Judas Iscariot. Don't worry, Aaron, I've downloaded it. Right. And then you'll soon find out what they're like then. You never know, you might get promoted to being Jesuit, but you won't get paid. I wouldn't mind a month's pay of a sort of, I don't know, fourth level Jesuit, provincial UK. That would be a serious amount of money, that. For 9, 10, 11 months pay. Oh yeah, I wouldn't mind that. It would sort all my problems out. But I wouldn't take money off those pigs anyway. Well, I'm thinking of closing now. Whoever's watching, please come in and chat. What are you worried about? Are you frightened of being kicked out of the Denlinger crew? Oh no, my life will end. Nobody in the Denlinger crew will talk to me now. What a bunch of sissies. I mean, I've followed Bryan Denlinger as such. I mean, I say followed, I mean, you know, I've watched his videos up to a point some years ago and I sort of lost interest, really. I sort of kept up with it in the vain hope that he was going to get back on track. You know, I had an inkling, a discernment when he brought his wife on, when he first brought her on. I think he was out in the woods, I can't remember. I thought there's something wrong with this. I can't remember exactly what I thought. But I knew it was a mistake as soon as she opened her mouth. Anyway, If you don't want to come in and talk to me, if you can't comment, I mean, you could have created a new YouTube channel by now and come in and said something. Don't be a scaredy cat. Right, I'm going in 2 minutes unless you come in and chat with me. Jeff, are you there? Jeff Allen. Another victim of the Denlinger crew. Is that you, John? Too busy eating again, are you? Leaving a brother all alone on a live stream. Nobody to talk to on the day after Boxing Day. Not that I celebrate Christmas. Okay, if you don't want to talk to me, then don't. But this statement here, Jacob, anybody listening, please feel free to tell Jacob what I've said. Page 427. I mean, Jacob talks about this argument of the Godhead versus the Trinity as though he solved it. That particular debate, regardless of who was discussing it and who wasn't and blah blah blah, has been going around for 1500 years plus, just over, maybe 16 or 1700 years. And lo and behold, there was a star in the east. Jacob Thompson was born. Oh, he solved it. He has, he's brought healing. Well, of course he hasn't. What a fool. I can only ridicule him, that's all I can do. I can't, you know, I mean, it isn't all I can do. There's other things I could... You couldn't get me to read this book. And I mean, saying this in total sincerity, you couldn't get me to read his book. I certainly would never pay for it. I'd be dead first. If you offered me £500,000 in cash, use £20 notes or 50s. Right, if you offered me £500,000, I wouldn't take it. I would not take it. I would not read that book. He talks about it like it's the final word. What's he call it? Oh yeah, a definitive guide. Jacob the dummy. I mean, I can't even call you a dummy. You're stupider than that. I would sincerely hate to be your brain pan, Jacob Thompson. I would be screaming in agony if I was your brain pan with your brains resting upon me. That would be just pure agony for me. Normally I wouldn't take that line of argument or ad hominem. I don't even think I'm being ad hominem. In fact, I think in one way I'm being polite. Blasphemy much, Jacob? Anyway, that's enough of that clown. Right, who's in chat? Come on in. I mean, I don't bite or anything. I've got a YouTube tab open, but not the tab for this video. It's just YouTube in general. I'm going to delete that tab and see what happens. come in and chat. I don't bite. You're not going to get poisoned. I'm not going to try and corrupt you. I don't want to force you to believe anything, really. If you disagree with me on something, well, it can be done politely. You know, be a man about it. If you're a woman, don't bother. Go away. No exceptions. But you know, be a man about it. Be adult. Do other people decide who you talk to? Because I can assure you that nobody ever... I mean, I've talked to some pretty evil people, you know. You'd be surprised. I'm not telling you who or whatever it was that they did. But anyway, you know, what was the point I was going to make there? Yeah, that's it. There's nobody on this earth, I don't care who they are, who's going to tell me that I'm forced to talk to somebody, a particular person, anybody. And I'm not going to put up with, if given the opportunity, I'm not going to put up with somebody telling me not to talk to someone, either in the other corner of the playground, or, you know, somebody telling me not to talk to that person in that cell, or this, that and the other on this channel. No. Any of you daft enough to try that. In fact, you know, something else had just occurred to me. Because I wondered why Accountable KJV and one or two others said, oh, why don't you check out Ed Denlinger's channel, you know, or King's Table, because Accountable KJV, you know, he's got, I don't know what it is, I haven't asked King's Table, it's none of our business, I don't even know, I don't know, I've asked him, but I don't know why Accountable KJV hates King's Table so much. Maybe hate is a strong word, but he even suggested, oh, go and have a look at what King, I mean, I think they wanted me to comment on Ed Denlinger's video or King's Table video. This is long before Accountable KJV falsely accused me of being a Jesuit. A couple of weeks before, 2 or 3, maybe 4. He resented it, you know. I know that he resented it when, because he must have discerned or guessed or whatever that I didn't accept Aaron Deering as a brother. He didn't like that. A couple of other things he didn't like as well. Come on in. I know there's somebody there listening. Hello. If that's you, Justin. Justin, I know you know what's going on in that cult. Come out of it. You know they're all backstabbing each other in Skype. Like a bunch of little girls. And look how they treated A.B. Maritime Bible here and John Craggan. Decent young lad. Okay, he's got his failings and his errors and like, you know. But the way they treated him was just totally rude, unfair, disgusting. Of the devil, I would say. I know that you see what's going on, Justin, if that's you. Suit yourself anyway. I'm not that bothered. If you're not bothered, I'm definitely not. How's that grab you? What do you think of me apples? If you're not bothered about being deceived or the way your brothers are behaving, and they are Christians, I acknowledge you as a Christian, 982. If that's you, divisive inerrantist, Matthew Landau, please go away, you pompous, nauseating, hypocritical piece of garbage. What do you think of that? I would say that to your face as well. Believe you me, I would say it to your face. And I wouldn't care if I got a kick in. Wouldn't bother me. But I would definitely say it to your face. I have no doubts about that. Not that I would want to start anything stupid, you know. Can't believe. I mean, I genuinely though, I sort of expected better from you, Matthew. Really, seriously. But no, you just double down on stupid. Frank of King's Table, kryptonite to the Denlinger crew. Come on in. Or if that's you, Tony, Shepherd's ambassador, come on in. But if you're a woman, don't bother. I don't hate women. You know, got my reasons. John Cragan, is it? No, if it was John, he'd be writing. Frank, who else could it be? Jeff Allen? Jeff Allen? Oh dear. Let me just put my speaker on.
Sorry, you're blue line in mode.
Line in mode. Now, I don't know if you know what wind is, but I'm going to explain it to you. Just believe, just believe, just believe. Meh, meh, meh. Who's that? Who do you think that is? Meh. Just imagine some tumbleweed going across the screen. And talking with his hands like he's got an ostrich in his palm or something. Jacob, you fool! Hold on, it's 16:12, 4:15. So it must be sort of around 10 o'clock in the USA. Could it be accountable KJV there listening? Fool. Could be. It could be King's Table. You might be sneaking up on me into my stream. Alexander Hartley, you fool. I mean, imagine how stupid that is. I didn't think of myself as owning the stream or any of that, in charge of it. But he accused me, and I've got a screencast of that comment that you made, Alexander, if that's you. Me sneaking in. You. It's funny though, isn't it? All the so-called ex-sodomites in the Denlinger crew are all supporting Aaron Deering, who is struggling with sodomite fantasies of bondage. And divisive inerrantist apparently has a problem with porn. We've all got little thingies, you know, masturbating over his laptop. I don't care if you don't like what I'm saying here. I'm not trying to be nasty. I'm just sort of letting you know really what's. No, I mean, I probably shouldn't have said some of the stuff, but I think you deserve it. So you're not going to tell me who you are then? Oh, there's two of you listening now. Come in, one of you. Yeah, I didn't buy your PDF, Jacob Thompson. I'd be dead first. Right. I'm going now. I wonder if that's Mega Daily. Oh, hope not. Right, I'm gone. Bye bye. There's a link there if you want to come in. I know there's two of you there now watching. Oh, you've gone again. Right, I am going now. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, good riddance. Well, I'm thinking the same thing.